My next question. What do you believe should be the role of the sheriff regarding illegal immigration and border security? Mr. Gore?
Well, we beat around the bush on this one pretty good already. I truly believe that immigration is a national security issue, and that should be the responsibility also of local law enforcement, but not our primary role. We have an obligation to work with our federal partners whose primary responsibility is to enforce the immigration laws of this country. We have done that in this administration. As I mentioned before, let's look out into 2,200 square miles of this county, the rural part of this county that was it's really covered till most recently about a year and a half ago by 33 deputies that worked out of their residences and were off duty basically after 10 o'clock at night. Through the Stone Garden program, we have got $18 million of federal grant money to fund overtime to where we have deputies out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're getting results. We're finding gangbangers out in Campo. I wonder what they're doing out there at 2 in the morning. They're smuggling drugs or smuggling guns back into Mexico. We've had over 500 arrests in the last year through the Stone Garden program. We've had over 165 seizures of contraband through the Stone Garden program. And these aren't just deputies wandering around out there driving around. These are intelligence-led operations because we're working with our partners in the Border Patrol, in Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and that's the logical way and the intelligent way to approach this problem as partners with our federal law enforcement officers. In the jails, some sheriffs have gone around and they designated their officers as 287G and made them immigration officers in the jail. We opened up our jails and we gave desk space to immigration enforcement officers so they can do their job inside our jails, and that makes me a good, I think, steward of your local tax money. Let the federal government do their job in cooperation with us. We're on the right track. I've talked to people in customs all up and down the border. They think we're on the right track. We're a model for the rest of the southwest border. We're held up as a model by Alan Burson, the border czar for the Department of Homeland Security. We're on the right track. Don't turn our deputies into strictly immigration officials. Let us work in cooperation with them and we'll get the job done.
Thank you. Mr. LeSueur?
Wow, what a change in attitude. What a change in attitude. Wow, wasn't that long ago they were saying, no, we're not going to get involved in this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. As far back as time goes on this department, there's been a cooperative effort to work directly with the federal agencies, the Border Patrol, Customs that used to be, and ICE and all this nowadays. It was a situation where we worked directly with them and we helped them. And if we saw something, we went after it and we turned them over to them. It didn't take a federal grant or anything such as that. Federal grants are wonderful things, but it didn't take a federal grant at that time. And this didn't happen until recently. You know, for over the past year and a half, I've talked about immigration here in San Diego County and the fact that we need to do things on immigration. It's not just pay lip service to it. There's a whole lot going on there. There is a whole different type of person coming across the border today that came across the border 30 years ago. Today we've got hardcore criminals. We have prostitutes. We have burglars. We have rapists. We have murderers coming across. We have cross-border crime going crazy. I don't want to see San Diego get like Laredo and New Laredo. I don't want to see that happen between us and Tijuana. But it takes more than just getting the grant. We should have been going on all along. We should have had these things going all the way along. It should be a regular budget situation where we work directly with the Border Patrol. It is not hard at all to partner with them. I remember we partnered with the Border Patrol and the Imperial Valley Sheriff's Department, worked out in East County, and we had results. And then that was kind of poo-pooed off and went away. But if we don't work on situations like this, we're going to have more and more crimes. 30% of all those prisoners in our state prisons right now, approximately 30%, are here illegally. And somebody wasn't catching them when they came across. Thank you.
Mr. Duffy?
I like to improve upon things. I don't like the status quo. I like to make things better, leave something better than you found it. We can do a better job with a lot of things on immigration, but first I want to preface it with a couple of things. The first thing is that we have to have a relationship with our communities, as I talked about earlier. We protect everybody in this county, whether you're here legally or not. If you're victimized, if you're raped, if you're the victim of a crime, a hate crime, we're going to protect you just as well as anybody else. There's no discrimination on that. And we can't effectively do that. People run away from law enforcement, are afraid to talk to them because they're here in this country illegally. So there has to be a balance between enforcing that law, which we all took an oath, as Jay said earlier, to enforce laws of this country, and that's one of them. Also balance that with our ability to deal with them. In California, we cannot act on any immigration law. Very simply put, it's a federal violation, so a state peace officer cannot arrest someone for that federal crime. However, likewise, a federal agent cannot arrest someone for a California crime. The fix for that is a program that Sheriff Gore mentioned, is 287G. That allows deputy sheriffs to be cross-sworn essentially as an INS agent, so they can act in that capacity in two different parallel programs, one for in the jails, one for in the field. So let's talk about the jail system there. We open our doors, give them a desk, help yourself look around, cooperate with them. We can do a better job by that by cross-training our classification deputies who already check everybody coming in the jail for warrants, military holds, you name it. Why not empower them to actually also check their immigration status, and if there's a violation, place a hold on them so they don't get released if charges are dropped. If you're a criminal in jail, you should stay in there. If you're here legally, I don't want to put you back out on the streets again, like Camacho, who shot and killed the Oceanside police officer. That's a problem. Oddly, we talk about cooperation. I just heard today about a PowerPoint, which, Sheriff, you might want to check on at one of your jails, which put out a policy about we don't notify INS if we come across people in our jails illegally through the course of our duties. We should not notify them. That INS cannot talk to people inside of our facilities until they're booked, and that we will not allow them to interview people in certain situations.
Thank you.
You know what? The system is broken. It's broken. You know that. That's why you're here. It's broken. The federal government is not enforcing the borders because they don't want to. The county law enforcement entities are obligated to keep you safe. This is really on you. You hear a bunch of platitudes, I'm into this, I'm into that. The truth is, if you understand operational realities, when you get, and I'm telling this from personal knowledge from 30 years, when you get people who are here illegally, you're stuck for the moment, and the federal government tells you, we're not going to come and get them. Now the stories are changing. I like this campaign because people are actually learning what I know as they get a chance to listen to what is the reality. And so I like to hear them come forward, but I'm going to be the sheriff, so I already get this stuff. You just need to know that I know what I know. You don't need to know. Illegal immigration can and should be impacted. If you have a competent sheriff, which we haven't, you can impact it using California laws if you understand what the laws are. You weave a better fabric and you dry up the well. We're talking about treating symptoms here. We have to treat the cause, and the cause is that you have the lure. It's like with drugs. So when you dry up the well, it stops. And there's a host, there are 40,000 vehicle code sections. I know them. I know the health and safety, the penal code, all. I've done it day in and day out. Some of these people, A, have never done it, or haven't done it in 20 years, or gave it up to be a politician. I did it till the day I walked out. We need a sheriff of this county who understands how to make this stuff work and will hold the government accountable and do what you need done so that you know you're supported. I'm that person.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. How would you describe your leadership style? What characteristics of leadership distinguish you from your opponents? We'll start with you, Mr. Lesueur.
Gosh, I was hoping you'd start with Mr. Ruff. I want to hear that. I think really leadership is a great deal by example, and it's also how you treat people. It's how you talk to people, it's how you interact with people. I think authority is much like a battery. Every time you use it, you discharge it a little bit. Leadership is something where people should want to perform, not something where they feel like they're forced. They should feel like they're a part of a team. They should, in fact, be a part of a team. The time I worked here on the PD and on the Sheriff's Department, on my city council, on the state legislature, I didn't figure that my employees worked for me. I figured we were a team, we worked together. And I think that's how you do things. I don't think you have to raise your voice and shout and tell everybody what you know or have to use excuses for things. I think people pretty much know how you feel and pretty much see how you lead and pretty much see how you do what you do. And that's what makes leadership. Leadership is something that, as I say, if you're doing something right and people actually want to go ahead and do those things that you're doing and those things that you are saying that we have to accomplish, then it becomes a team goal. So if you end up in a situation where you're a team and you're the head of the team, then you're in fact a leader. If you end up being a boss, then you're not a leader.
Thank you, Mr. Duff.
I too agree that you lead by example. They're working hard, they're rolling up your sleeves and helping people get things done. That sets an example for your troops, that's how they should work too. Lead by your convictions. Those are all very valuable lessons that we've all learned in our lives that we want to carry forward in how we do our job in law enforcement. Active and engaged, I think, describes my actual style of leadership, because I do not believe that the sheriff of this county is a ceremonial post, a figurehead, by any stretch of the imagination. It requires active involvement with the activities in the department, making sure that the deputies feel supported by what they're doing and they're valued in their work, appreciated, and safe in doing the work with the right equipment and right tools. I think that pretty well sums it up.
Thank you. Mr. Ruff?
I've worked for them all. Sounds good here, but in reality it's not true. I am an empowerer, and I don't mind not being in charge and the leader, but those who work with me on the team that I have know they're empowered. They know they're supported. I don't have to even go out unless they need me there. And the thousands that have worked for me over these years, because I have been all over in 30 years, felt comfortable to come to me, and the reason I have the explanations about the less I do, the better I do, is because they trusted me as a supervisor and a leader. A leader models the behavior they desire. As a cop, I'm a hard-charging, kick your door down, take your butt to jail kind of guy. But I could be a nice guy too, as long as things are going the way they're supposed to. And the way that you make sure that happens is that you understand the law. And you use the law to do what needs to be done. And it isn't with an iron fist. There's a letter and a spirit. And I get those. My leadership style is, I am on your side. We are a family. I got my team laughing every day before we would go out to put it on the line. And I would tell them the reason that we're laughing is because we might all have to die together in about a half an hour. So I want to start this day off well. And they did go out with me, and they did put it on the line with me, and they knew that I didn't just send them out, I led them. And that's the reason that a team I led, received the Medal of Valor 2.5 years late, because those kind of accolades get you promoted. And that's not the kind of awards the bank robbers and the rapists and the serial murderers and the other people that I arrested and the kidnappers and carjackers that I arrested, those went unacknowledged at all through the administration, because those are accolades and promotions that can't stop them from promoting you. And I get that. There's a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gore?
Thank you. I've had the honor to serve in leadership roles in San Diego and really all over the country. I don't think it has to be that complicated. I think you set a vision for the organization. You set general goals, guidance, where you want the organization to go, so everybody's pulling the same direction. Then you get them the tools and the equipment and the training, your troops, to do that job. And then you put systems in place to monitor and make sure they're getting the job done. Any good leader realizes the higher you go in an organization, the less you're going to know about what's going on at the street level. So leadership to me is creating an environment to where everybody feels like they can send information up as well as just directives from the top down. That's when you take advantage of, in the Sheriff's Department case, 4,000 employees who are out there doing the job every day. They know how we might be able to save another $10 or $15 million out of our budget. And the undersheriff and I have been going around to every facility in this county, which totals about 33 last time I counted, asking for their support, asking for their ideas, and convincing them that this is not a top-down exercise, that we're going to be a better organization if we have an environment where people feel free to get their 2 cents in and send that message up the line. That has to be started at the top, through the undersheriff, down through the station commands and the facility commands. That's what leadership's about. And then empowering your own employees. Let them do the job. Get out of their way. One of my favorite sayings of the former sheriff that I've always taken to heart was that you take the job seriously, but not yourself. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself, take a step back, not take yourself too seriously, and create an environment where people can feel open to talk to the boss. It's that simple.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to give you an opportunity also to ask questions of the candidates. We have a microphone here, so please, if you have questions, feel free to line up at the microphone. Thank you. And please identify yourself and state the part of the county that you live in. Thank you.
My name's Michael Shimleski, and I live down in Kearney Mesa area. And I am taking part in the open carry movement, as you can tell. And my question for all the candidates is, open carriers around the county are repeatedly being harassed by San Diego law enforcement, local PD, sheriffs, everyone equally. On almost every occasion, they file complaints with the agency, and on the majority of those complaints, the response they get is that more training is required and will be given, but nothing's done to those sheriffs who are harassing them and violating their constitutional rights. As sheriff, how would you respond to repeated complaints about constitutional rights violations and harassment for open carriers?
Mr. Duffy, I'd like to give you the first opportunity to answer that question.
I don't think that's any different than any other complaint we receive in the Sheriff's Department. We deal with it professionally, we identify the facts, and if there's a finding of that there was some wrongdoing, we would impose appropriate discipline necessary to correct that behavior. So without specifics even about what the issue was, if nothing was done, it's kind of hard to answer. The reality is that if there was harassment, that's inappropriate, and we wouldn't tolerate that. So if there's a breakdown somewhere, we need to figure out what that might be, but it's almost like you have to have that incident to say what could or couldn't happen. So you have a couple options available to you if you're not satisfied with what happened with you in the Sheriff's Department. There's a Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. You can also file a complaint with them and have a look at it from their point of view if you wish. It's an option available to you.
Thank you. Response from Mr. Gore?
Let me echo what Jim said. If you have a specific complaint, call me. I'm unaware of any complaints. We went through an extensive training program with our deputies, went out, sent a 3-page memo out explaining the law, what was legitimate, what wasn't, what they could check, what they couldn't check. Because you got to understand, you walk into a mall and you're carrying a sidearm, it concerns people. We're going to get calls for service. So we show up, and my understanding is we have the right to make sure that gun is unloaded, and that will be done. Beyond that, if you're complying with the law, I don't know of any harassment. If there is, please, and your complaint has not been appropriately addressed by our department, call me. I'll look into it and I'll get an answer back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruff, did you have a response?
No, we can go to Jay next, and I'll wait till the end. And are you
Okay,
going in that order?
That's fine.
Let's do that.
Mr. Lesueur?
Why, thank you, Mr. Ruff. You know, I have to tell you, a few years back, I was on a motorcycle trip, and we stopped in Arizona to get something to eat, about 4 or 5 of us. And I noticed, after I sat down and started to eat, I was sitting to look around the restaurant, and I noticed that I was probably one of the few people that wasn't carrying a gun. Most of them, I think, were the 1911 model, which is a pretty formidable weapon, one of my favorite. At any rate, and of course, Arizona is an open carry state, and it's legal anywhere. Now it's legal here in certain places of course you can't carry it. But it's a situation, I think, for most part, a lot of, this is a phenomenon that has occurred recently, but by that I mean, say in the last X number of years that you never saw before that. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't mean that it's illegal either. And I feel like probably everyone up here, as sheriff, if there's a problem, let us know. Secondly, it's a very simple thing to explain to deputies and with bulletins and briefing training and things such as that. So I just don't see where there should be a problem. If there's a problem, it should be corrected.
Thank you. Mr. Ruff?
It creates a problem because we live in a society in San Diego County that has not had people carrying guns. The problem that you have is that people get murdered all the time in shopping malls, grocery stores, in movie theaters. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So when you're the professional, see, you know you, but law enforcement people don't know you. So when they show up, and I can give you an example, before I was a rookie, when I was a reserve, one of my partners got stabbed to death. They did save his life, but he got stabbed to death the very next week after we were the friend of the guy. Now that was with a knife. So when you have a gun and you show up and we don't know who you are, now see, I'm pretty comfortable with everyone, maybe not now everybody carrying guns here, but generally when you eat with cops, you kind of get it. We all carry guns. But when you have people just showing up and it's your job to stare down the barrel of that gun and it might be loaded, you take it lightly, we don't. So every time law enforcement comes out, their life hangs in the balance of whether they're going to make a mistake or not. And you feel inconvenienced, but it is not a constitutional violation to front you off, because that's what these people pay law enforcement to do. So if it ruffles your feathers a little bit, okay, then it does, because we can't appease everybody. And once we figure out that your gun's not loaded, then we can let you go, okay. And the more you want to do that, okay. Because the time the officer doesn't check your gun and walks away and you shoot him in the back of the head because you're torqued off that day, that's the day that their life ends. So if you're a disciplined law enforcement professional, every time you get the call, you do the job the way it's supposed to be. If they're harassing you, then you can complain. If they're doing their job, things happen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
My name is Michael Schwartz. I live in Santee. Las Colinas is a women's detention facility that is currently 14 acres. It's looking to be expanded to 45 acres. One side of it's going to bump up against Santee, one of Santee's public parks. The other side is going to bump up against one of the major thoroughfares in Santee. It's going to be a huge scar on the city of Santee. It's not just a Santee issue, though. It's $300 million on a facility to teach detained women who won't even be there for more than a year how to sew and garden. The city of Santee has tried to talk to the sheriff's department. They've tried to talk to the county. I realize the county voted to give the money, but I also realize that the sheriff of San Diego County could stop this and make it go away. You've talked about, Mr. Gore, you've talked about being a steward of tax money, and you've talked a lot about communication. And in this situation, when the city council and the mayor of Santee, and frankly, everyone I've talked to in the county thinks this is a bad idea, there's got to be another alternative, and not giving them a voice. Well, frankly, that's not being a steward, and it's not about communication. It's my way or the highway. And I encourage you, and the only thing left to do is to file a lawsuit like the city of Santee has done, or if you're a citizen, come to a public forum and say this. That's the only thing, it's the only alternative. And, I would just encourage you, I beg you to find another alternative. There are at least half a dozen good alternatives. Please do not put this scar on the city of Santee. Please do not spend the county's tax money and waste it in this way. And I realize there's no question here, but it had to be said.
Thank you.
Frankly, I'm going to go to every public forum, and I'm going to say it again.
We can start with Mr.
Can I respond to it since it was directed at me, I think?
Okay, yeah, sure.
And I know that
Sure.
everybody else has their view on that. I've heard
Thank
Jim's. I appreciate your concern. Let me start by saying that there's a jail in downtown San Diego, there's a jail in downtown Chula Vista, there's a jail in downtown Vista, and the Las Colinas Women's Facility in Santee was put there on county land before Santee was an incorporated city. We need to expand the female facility. We're going to go from 800 beds to 1,200 beds. There's a need for more female beds. We came up with a plan out there. We had community meetings. We met with the community. We, in fact, changed the entire configuration, took it off of Magnolia Avenue because of the concerns of the people that lived on Magnolia. We understood that. We went to a north-south configuration instead of an east-west. The undersheriff before me worked extensively with Keith Till, the city manager, trying to come up with a compromise and looking at the size of the footprint and over objections from people in detentions that said, this is the way it should be built. And this is good prison architecture. He still was trying to compromise and bring the footprint down and was still told no by the city. So, I mean, there was a lot of negotiations. Maybe the citizens didn't hear about it, but we were trying to talk to the city council and the mayor, and we were running into a stone wall. So now, and as far as the cost, I agree with you. The cost does seem high, and we hope we can build it for less than that. That was probably a worst case scenario estimate a while back. We're hoping it'll come in a lot cheaper than that. We're hoping to get $100 million from the state through state funding on AB 900. And like I said, we're hoping to bring that cost down. But as far as why does it have to be in Santee, I understand probably nobody wants a jail in their city, but they're all over the county. That's a booking facility for females, our primary one. We can't locate it out in Campo. It would take cops off the beat too long by the time they transported a female prisoner there. There's a lot of reasons. I believe we've been good partners. We've been to town meetings. We tried to work with the city council and the mayor. And we need to build a women's detention facility, a new one.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Mr. Rupp?
As long as you do it their way, it's okay. You got cheated in Santee. It's absolutely wrong. It's what the difference between politicians and a career law enforcement guy. I'll find another place if you make me your sheriff to move that jail to, because it's wrong. For the time being, we could put it in the one they closed in Descanso. And there's no other way to do this? Bull! You have booking facilities, and then you put them on sheriff's buses, 55 at a time, and run them out after they're pre-booked and send them out to the jail. It could be done. They just don't want to do it because you don't matter. You do to me, and you do to me, and you do to me, and I want you to have a sheriff that you know you matter to. And these have all had a chance to lead and object and make comments and do whatever they wanted to do in their whiz-bang little toolkits here, and we have this hellacious problem. And that's because the people, the 131,000 that wanted me to be their sheriff, if they had had me as their sheriff, I wouldn't have done some of the nuclear devices at the events that people were at, and we would have solved these pre-booking issues because I worked in the jail system too. It can be done, and it will be done. And you've been cheated and ignored and lied to and deceived and betrayed and misled. And just because there happens to be a jail somewhere doesn't mean we need to put that in the center of Santee. There's hundreds of thousands, 42,000 square miles in San Diego County. I know damn good and well there's a place we can build a jail, and if we've got to book people and then move them out there to benefit you, then we'll do it. There are people that commit crimes that get booked and things happen and it might be inconvenient, but that's just how it works. Don't do the crime, you won't have the problem. You need a sheriff that gets that for you.
Mr. Lusor?
You know, I had the privilege of serving 10 years on my city council, so I found out a lot about what land use really means in a city, what quality of life means in a city. The city of Santee right now is running one problem after another with the city of San Diego and the placement of the sanitary fill there. And I'm glad to see that Bruce listened to me when I answered this question at the last forum. I talked about the fact that we could have a booking facility, and we could take these people and put them on a bus and take them out to another facility, because that's what it ought to be. That's what you call working with the community. But going around as a 900-pound gorilla saying, this is what we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to be done, is absolutely incorrect. It is not working with the community when there are other ways that this can be accomplished, and it can be very simply done with a booking facility and a detention facility in another area.
Mr. Duffy?
I think that whole situation is really a tragedy. It came about because of disconnected leadership, continuous change in command, so no continuity of philosophy in how we're going to do things or projects. I know that firsthand from actually having worked there. I've booked people in a jail. Let's start with the first issue. There is a need to replace that jail. It's too old. We got it in the 60s as a juvenile camp at one time. It's outdated, has to be rebuilt. Our focus at one time was to add on to that facility, keep it in place, add housing units, move our patrol station over there, bring the fire department closer, our gas station, repair facilities in sort of a complex like in Vista. That would have made sense, but we didn't do that. It wouldn't work out. It cost too much money. We abandoned that project, and when the light should have come on, when we're going to build the jail from scratch, tear it down, build it from dirt up, let's find the best place to put that. We didn't choose Santee to put Las Colinas in. It was there when we got it. Santee is not a convenient location to book any inmates in, male or female for that matter. A better place to put that, and I advocated this back as far as 2003, to put it up in Kearney Mesa, at Claremont Mesa Boulevard and Interstate 15, where the Registrar of Voters is at, our county annex. That's county-owned land. It is convenient. It's large enough to put that jail there. Plus, on top of that, move our transportation detail over there so the buses go to work and leave that facility full of inmates going to court. Las Colinas, like a lot of other jails, we got to transport every woman there, inmate, to a courthouse for their court trials and hearings. That takes up a lot of resources. There's a lot of wasted empty buses going up and down the freeway because they're based in different locations. It should have had a different outcome, but it didn't. The fact of the matter is the sheriff doesn't have the authority to move that jail, unfortunately. The best thing I could do is refuse to put my inmates in there. But that would be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? To have a big jail, $300 million, but not occupied. We had that before, George Bailey for a while. Not a good idea. We're stuck with where it's at now. That's the reality. I wish it hadn't happened. In the future, these are going to come up again. And with an active sheriff, it's not going to come out the way this one came out. We'll have a better result and listen to the community and think before we act, basically. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have another question, please?
Yes, hello. I'm Diana Faferka Bomber, and I live in San Diego. And you're doing a great job, by the way, all of you candidates. My question is on the firearms issue. Okay, when I was listening, I was thinking to myself, how are you going to prevent, especially with all the HIPAA laws and things going on, someone with some type of a mental issue, depression, or something from getting a hold of a firearm?
Thank you. Mr. Lesueur will give you the first opportunity.
There are certain, as I mentioned earlier tonight, I said there are X number of states, I think 36 to 39 states, that are shell issue states, and there are certain criteria that allow people to have, to qualify for the firearm. And one of them is, one of the disqualifiers is a mental or psychiatric disorder. And it can very easily be made to where it can be found out in a background check by law enforcement. I agree, I don't want to see a person with acute depression or schizophrenia or something like that with a firearm, quite frankly, that's a very dangerous situation. So they would have to be eliminated.
Thank you. Mr. Duffy?
It is a very good question because there's no science behind that. The first criteria I mentioned is it's good moral character. And that's part of the background check. The same thing we do when we hire people into employment or any other position, we conduct a background check, and that's how we determine those things. One of the issues is in some states it's a shall issue. If you apply, run a background check, nothing there, we're going to issue it to you. We're still going to have an interview process. I want someone to talk to you, interview you before we issue a permit to make sure that you don't walk in there with a t-shirt that says, shoot them all, let God sort them out. That's a good indicator right there, probably not the right person to get a gun permit. But part of that background check would indicate those sort of things. And HIPAA laws have no bearing on our issue because when you apply for it, you sign a waiver to release information. So we want to make sure they're thorough. Because here's the bottom line. Out of all this discussion, it's my responsibility as sheriff to protect that right of me under law to issue a permit. If I don't do due diligence in doing that, then what's going to happen? It's not a constitutional right we're acting under. It's a law the legislature controls. We give a gun to somebody who shouldn't have a gun and do something dastardly. The legislature is going to change that section so the sheriff can't issue a permit or put in exactly what good cause means. Let's protect that.
Mr. Ruff?
And we can avoid what you're concerned about. Can't be avoided. If you think about having a competent concealed weapons program where you have people that, should the whack job decide they want to take a gun, all they got to do is break into a house and get a gun. Just because there are laws, the criminals don't obey the laws now. So just because there happens to be a law in the books that says you can't have a gun, if somebody is intent on doing harm, they're going to do harm. I think the key that we need to look at is with the competent concealed weapons program where other people are trained, God forbid, and they usually make the cops do this dirty stuff, but somebody is going to pull a gun out in a crowded store or a crowded theater or a shopping mall. If nobody has any weapons, then they're shooting fish in a barrel. If you have lots of trained people who have been through weapons safety courses who know somebody may save your life And that's the key, because you're not going to stop the random act by saying nobody should carry guns, because the criminals do. And every country that's tried that to take guns away has failed. Crime has skyrocketed, just gone out of sight. So we have to find a balance. And then the other part is to have an environment in a community, in the county. 3 million people, 1,500 permits, that's a lot. So you need to have enough armed people to keep those who don't want to carry a weapon safe should it happen, like off-duty cops. So that's a way that we could address those, but we can't stop your fear. We need to protect ourselves and be ready to take care of them.
Thank you. Mr. Gore?
I think they've covered your question as far as the HIPAA laws and the waiver you'd have to sign. I keep coming back to the state law, which says all these other requirements plus good cause. To me, my interpretation and the way the previous sheriffs have interpreted it, even the one that Jay was under sheriff for, good cause is more than I want one. I feel that's a responsible enforcement of the state law as written. Now, if the state wants to turn this into a shall issue state, fine. I'll abide by that law. But I can't make the laws here in the state, and I think the way we're interpreting it is a responsible interpretation of state law.
Okay, please, we have another question. This will be our last question. This is, still have time for one more. Thank you.
Yes, excuse my voice, but I have a medical problem, so I hope you all can hear me. I have a quick statement, then a question. The question will just require a yes or no answer from any of you. So, first I'd like to say that my name, Mark Scora from San Diego, instead of using the word diversity, I for one would like to hear the word competence used more often by all four of you. Basically, once again, this is a yes or no question. Will each of you answer whether or not you would be willing to follow the direction of Joe Arpaio of Arizona in regard to cracking down on illegal immigration, as well as saving money by reducing money spent on food, buildings, and other amenities such as recreation on prisoners, and putting them to work? Once again, you can now accept the Joe Arpaio way of law enforcement by just answering yes or no. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Duffy?
You gave an all or nothing question there, so the answer is no.
Thank you. Mr. Ruff?
I'm not going to stand up. There's a litany of, there's a lot of yeses in what you have asked, but the realities are there's some legal no's, so it can't just be a yes or no question. We can do great stuff, and I talked about that throughout, and there are many things we should be doing that we aren't, so it's not fair to say yes or no to that. It's just simply not fair.
Thank you. Mr. Gore?
This is probably the first time in 4 debates I agree with Bruce Ruff's answer. There was too many issues. There's some issues that we can't do here. There's some things I disagree with that Joe Arpaio does, and there's probably some I agree with. So it's not a take it or leave it response. I can't take it. So.
Mr. LeSueur?
Well, I happen to like Joe Arpaio. And Joe Arpaio has endorsed me. And put your calendars down, November 6th, he's going to be over here to do a fundraiser for me. You can ask him questions yourself. But you know, the thing I like about Joe Arpaio is we've got all these people saying, why? Why do I do this? Why? Joe Arpaio says, why not? It's a pretty marked difference. He says, why not do this? He was hired by the people, and by that I mean he's elected. He was elected and hired by the people to enforce the law. He took an oath, and he's keeping the oath. He's keeping his oath. He is protecting and defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He is upholding the Arizona law. He is arresting criminals and putting them in jail. And he is probably, as people say, the toughest sheriff in America. And I think he's a pretty good guy.
Thank you, gentlemen. It appears we do have time for one more question. Sir, I believe you had a question. Yes.
Sure, that'd be great. Adam Thomas.
Go ahead and stand. Go to the mic, please.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam Thomas. I'm a resident of Serra Mesa here in San Diego. I have a question regarding firearms as well, but this isn't actually firearms for the citizens, it's firearms for the sheriff's deputies. Currently, the sheriff's deputies are not issued carbine rifles for their self-defense or defense of the public. In fact, I understand, and Sheriff Gore, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you will not issue the sheriffs a letter authorizing them to purchase carbine rifles on their own for their defense or for the defense of the population. Given the current threat levels that we're looking at in the community, and I've been a terrorist analyst for half of my life, is that we have a serious risk of being incurred upon by small unit forces with assault rifles coming right across from the border, if they're not already here, as well as explosives. We saw it happen in India. We could see it here happen very quickly and efficiently on soft targets, which would be a horrific event in our county. So if you are voted in as sheriff, would you either issue assault rifles or carbine rifles, law enforcement rifles, to your deputies, or would you at least provide them with a letter of recommendation or authorization to acquire them on their own so they could carry them, if not fund their own rifle?
Better yet, we're already doing it.
Great.
Unlike a lot of other agencies in the county, we do issue AR-15s to any deputy that needs one. And so that way we control the consistency, the ammunition, the weapon we're issued. There's an issue now that's come up where a lot of deputies want a letter to go out and buy an AR-15, and the reason being, and we've talked, as the undersheriff and I go around to all our stations, this comes up and we're trying to explain to the deputies what the law is right now. There was a law enforcement exemption to owning an AR-15. So if you retired and you were a former peace officer, there was a former peace officer exemption. That part of the law was overturned in 2002. So now there was a suit and said, why should they be treated different than everybody else? So there is no exemption. So when I'm trying to take care of my deputies and say, hey, I don't want you to think that if you go out and buy this AR-15 on your own, that when you retire next year, you're going to be legally in possession of it, because the way the law is written now, our interpretation is it's illegal. What we've asked for is an attorney general opinion, say, okay, are we interpreting this correctly? If in fact there is an exemption, I will give them letters. Let them go out and buy AR-15s. But we issue it to all our employees now. Unlike, like I say, most of the other departments in the county.
I'd like to let Mr. Ruff respond next. Thank
They
you.
never gave me one. They didn't give them to most of the people around me. It sounds good here, but I worked around this stuff. Yes, they will get them. We'll find every way and we'll challenge the law. And the reason that they get special exemption and should, because they're 830.2 peace officers. They go through all of the training, some of us, and actually do the work, again, some of us. And so I would defend that and be more than happy to go to the state and say, hey, I need it in San Diego because we're right on the border with Mexico and we got drug cartels with automatic weapons. And yes, we need to be able to respond. And I do agree with you. And we should be the best armed, which we're not, the best trained, which we're not. Great people, but they've been cheated out of training to save money so that administrators could get the next promotion. I'll stop the things like playing golf so that they can team build, or getting massages on duty so they can team build. Now this happened. And now that's a part of the other reason that they're a little pissed off to promote me when you bring this stuff out in public. But I would spend the money, unlike the administrations, on ballistic shields so that you might have a chance at deflecting some of the rounds, and buying weapons so you can respond, because they are bringing in AK-47s. They are here, they are training, and I will put pressure on the police chiefs in San Diego County that have them in that area, and we will collaboratively put together strike forces to take these people out, investigate them thoroughly, and get them before they become a major problem. But that's not even, that's just the drug cartels. With the terrorists that we have, and they are here, and if you look at what's going on, they just had 3 arrests nationally unrelated. So the cells are here, they're training here, and we need to be prepared. This is the most critical county, and we have not had administrators, alleged leaders, to take care of this stuff. I will be that one that does it for you, yes.
Thank you. Mr. LeSueur?
Well, you know, I hate to tell you that I kind of agree with Bruce Ruff.
You're getting smarter, Jake. So I'm glad to see at your age you can learn new tricks, so that's good.
You know, what I was thinking is maybe Bruce is getting smarter. But I don't know if that's possible. But anyway, no, that is correct. Those things are necessary. They are tools. That's exactly what these weapons are. They are tools, and if you want to build something or you want your people to do the best job, you give them the best tools. And quite frankly, you give them the best training. So I don't have any problem with that.
Mr. Duffy?
Again, shocked here a little bit in this that question. Very good one, by the way, because Sheriff Ward, double check tomorrow. This is real. You don't issue firearms to all your deputies. You don't have enough of them. They've run out. We had money. We issued about 2/3 of our deputies with foreign personnel AR-15 so they could have an individually issued, trained, sighted in their own rifle. We ran out of money. The other third want to buy their own at their expense, so they're equipped with the same tool, the same weapon that the other guy who hasn't issued one has. We don't have enough of them to go around. So why wouldn't you let your deputies buy their own firearms if they're willing to do that at their own expense, which saves me money for other things, and trust them to do that? The message that's sent to them is we don't trust you with these weapons. That's what the message is. Yet on the other side, the deputy over here has got a county property tag, number one, is allowed to have a firearm, but I can't buy my own. The law is straightforward on what it says, and I don't know the details on that again too, but it's clear, if you understand California law, that a pre-ban assault rifle, you registered, you're allowed to have that. The law allows a peace officer, now the current law we're talking about, can buy one under that same issue, register it so that they become, in essence, like a pre-ban purchase. California Department of Justice, their firearms division that does those licensing, has confirmed that, because I know the DSA has taken this issue to management many a time. There's a problem with that. There's a staff report from your own weapons training unit justifying why we should be doing this. You send the wrong message there. It is a problem as to why we have an issue with morale. So the answer is yes. That's one of those day one things. Sorry.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sorry we have no more time for questions. We're going to turn to the candidates' final statements. Gentlemen, you have 3 minutes each to give your final statement for this forum. Mr. Ruff, you begin. Thank you.
I think you've heard enough. I think you get it. If you can't figure this out, then you shouldn't vote. It's pretty clear. A lot of promises, a lot of I've been, and you know we have problems. That's why you're here. I'm the only one here with 131,673 countywide votes. The only one here. And I'm the only one who wasn't allowed to leave. And I'm asking you to help me become your sheriff. Obviously, you can see I'm full of enough stuff and vinegar. And a hard charger take care of business. I know the law, backwards and forwards, because I've practiced it for 30 years. And you will get what you're paying for. And the morale will change because deputy sheriffs want me to be their sheriff. So I'm asking you to help me help you take your sheriff's department away from the federal government, away from the unions, and away from the state politicians. Take it back for one of us who's a university-trained educator, spent his whole adult life in law enforcement operations. I've only been gone about 37, 38 months. So it's still new to me. I'm still there, I'm still connected, and that's what we need in these critical times. And we simply don't have that in the other candidates. And I'm glad they can learn.
Thank you. Mr. Duffy?
I want to get one thing very clear. Joe Arpaio didn't start the whole idea about pink underwear. John Duffy did, but they were green at the time. And that's reality. You can verify that. But the reason we did that wasn't to humiliate people. It's so they don't steal our clothes going out to jail with us. That's a problem. They get their own underwear going out the door. We'll pay for a tax for money while you're in here. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of issues about CCWs here. We're going the wrong way on those. And it goes back to judgment and who interprets the law. We had 2,200 permits issued in 1990. Now we have 1,500 with 1 million more people living here. So that should tell you something about how we're doing it and what the criteria is. That's not the right way to do business. interpreting things such as good cause. That's what the sheriffs you're going to elect to do are going to interpret those things. But not just on that one issue, on a lot of other issues. We just talked about the assault rifle issue, letting your own deputies buy a gun. That's an interpretation issue. It's a judgment call. The sheriff sets the policy and says, look, I trust my people. I'll let them do that. I'm not worried about the fact that someone might interpret it to say that if you have this firearm, you'd be committing a felony. Well, you know what? If that's the reality of it, then when the officer leaves the department, they have to sell the gun. That's the policy of the San Diego Police Department. They're committing a felony otherwise. I don't have to have a procedure to prevent that for liability purposes. They're going to get the jail they were just working in. They're going to be living in there if they don't change that. That's wrong. Community policing versus patrol. That was brought up earlier. It's a complete philosophical disconnect, unfortunately, from how our leadership sees it. It's not a program, it's a philosophy. Having a lot of deputies driving on patrol was determined long ago by many, many studies in the 90s. That's not an effective way to staff a police department. Studies were done on that. It doesn't do any good. The answer is having the right people in the right place to deal with the problems, be proactive about it, so that we don't waste money on top of that. My support, the deputy sheriffs want Bruce, that's good. They endorsed Jim Duffy. They did a survey process. Lots been said about that. Let's be accurate about it. There's about 2,000 members in the Deputy Sheriff's Association. Their board went through a number of processes, including an open forum like this, with questions from the deputy sheriffs. They went through a mailed out survey to every one of their members' homes as a Class 1 active member to ask them, who do you like us to endorse? Which candidate? Out of all those surveys that came back, 655 of them, 43% of them chose to have Jim Duffy as their sheriff. That's how I got the endorsement of the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm very proud of that. And it's been followed up with every other major law enforcement organization in this region. And that should say something in volumes of who they want to have lead them, not manage them. There's a big difference there. My entire career has been in the Sheriff's Department. I didn't retire and decide I want to come back or do something different. This is a good department. These are great people working here. And I know that because I've grown up here. I helped make it that way. I didn't just show up and say, I think I want to run it now. I was part of making it that way. And that should mean something to you as a voter. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. LeSueur?
First of all, thanks a lot for coming tonight. We appreciate it very, very much. I know each and every one of us do. I talked about in the very beginning, what are your qualifications? That's the most important thing you have going for you when you are applying for a job. What are your qualifications? What is your experience level? What have you actually done? Where have you worked? What have you actually achieved in your career? Now, you've seen tonight, you heard from everybody here, and you've seen a lot of different personalities. You've seen things thrown around like, you know, you're a politician or this, or it's the state politicians or the federal politicians or what have you. Well, folks, the thing of it is, that's part of experience. It's part of experience when you go up and you affect the laws and you make the laws and you help defeat the laws and you help defeat massive tax increases for the citizens and you help write laws and pass laws that make it safer for our kids, to make it safer for our families. That is not being a politician. That is being a politician. You don't go out and get elected and do the job by throwing rocks at everybody else. What you do is go out and say, this is what my qualifications are. This is what I will do. And this is why I will do it for you. The whole situation is, yes, I will do the job for you. And I say that very sincerely. If you want a sheriff who, A, believes that, hey, we do have to enforce the border. Yes, I respect you, Arpaio. I think he's a great sheriff because he's, like I said earlier, because he says, why not? He doesn't say why. We've been saying why way, way too long. You know, I had a city attorney one time that every time we came up with something in the city that we wanted to do, we wanted to get rid of all the massage parlors because we had the highest per capita in the county. They always told us why we couldn't do it, why we couldn't do it. And finally we got rid of that particular city attorney because we wanted a game winner. We didn't want a game loser. And we got a new city attorney. And you know what? We closed those places down. Well, I'm telling you what, we've got to go out there and win the game. And we have to say, no, we're not going to lose. We're going to do everything we possibly can to make it safer. I don't want to see a situation where your kids are taken right out of your front lawn. And that happens. I worked for years in the state assembly up there, 6 years. And every year, myself and a senator from down here carried a package we call our Kid Safe package. And that was to make sure that we passed laws that protected our kids. Make sure we get affected that way. And that's part of it. You are an elected member. of the public service right here when you become the sheriff. You need to know how to affect change in laws. You need to be willing to go up there. You need to go up and actually be able to say, this is how it's done, and this is who I want to carry the bill, and this is how we're going to support the bill, and this is how we're going to enact these laws. I had the first law for the past 10 years. It was changed from a misdemeanor to a felony because, no, most of the people on the other side of the law feel like, well, you know, people that do things like that are sick. They're not criminals. Well, they were criminals, and I did accomplishment. And I would appreciate your support and your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Gore.
Thank you again for being here tonight. Before I start, I just want to correct the AR-15 issue. And Jim, I stand corrected. If there are people out there that can't get them, that's not right. Jim and I have been around to 4 stations in the last 2 weeks, and we've talked about this, and we've asked every deputy, anybody here want an AR-15 that can't get one? We didn't hear anything coming back. Now, maybe they're telling DSA something different. Jim and I met with them. That's why we're going to the AG asking for this opinion. And if there's people out there that need them, that don't have them, we'll get it for them. Anyway, the other point, reserves and explorers. I think people need to know we have more explorers and more reserves than any other department in the county of San Diego. There's been laws changed, postage changed the requirements, making it tougher to be a reserve, but we're still very supportive of the program, and we're very supportive of the explorers because it does get us into the community. It builds our future deputies. I've heard a lot of talk here tonight, and it's been alluded to on several occasions about, well, you didn't work the streets, you haven't done the domestic violence, you haven't gone to this crime or that crime. You know, that's not what this job is about. I would venture to say I made more felony arrests in my first year in the FBI than anybody sitting next to me. I've stormed hijacked planes. I've been in shootouts with bank robbers and killed bank robbers. That's not what this job's about. It's an important part. I mean, you have to have been there. You have to know when that blood's pumping through your veins and the fear and the fright and knowing that it's not like TV. I've done that. But I've also gone to the top level of a major organization in the United States, probably the finest law enforcement organization in the world. And now I take great pride in the men and women of this sheriff's department. And I keep reiterating, we're doing a great job. You got a great department. It's well trained, it's well equipped, it's working in good facilities, and we're doing a great job. The leadership under Sheriff Collender, which I hope to continue, has brought this department to new levels. And don't let anybody tell you different. Politics is a terrible game, and it's really bad when it gets involved with good law enforcement, and that's what we have here. Look at your department, look at your crime rate, look at the quality of the deputies you've got out there and how they're equipped. We went an average of what, 8 to 10 shootings a year for years and years. Till we went out and we did an outside study, we came and looked at our policy procedures training, we issued some new equipment. We've gone almost 3 years now, we're 2 months short of 3 years, and this department has had 1 officer-involved shooting. That's pretty damn good. And that's a credit to the deputies and the equipment and the training that this department got those deputies. I'm proud to lead this department, and I would really like your support, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, candidates. We've reached the conclusion of our forum, and thank you so much for coming. And I'm sure you'll agree that we've become educated tonight about the candidates running for this very important office. And, you know, give yourselves a hand as well for coming, and the candidates. Thank you.